starting a new tradition here of barefoot storytelling. It just feels right, you know. A lot of themes of forgiveness in the air and ancestors, so this story from a long time ago. Once, a great rabbi was traveling through the countryside on his way home for the High Holy Days. And he happened to pass through a little village, and the people there knew of this rabbi, so they invited him to come into their shul and give a Dvar Torah. And he obliged them, and he talked about the artist and the weaver at his loom, the potter at her wheel, and he said, every artist, every artisan shapes each piece to a unique shape. And each of those pieces has the mark, a little piece of the artist in it. And he said, so our Creator shapes each one of us to a unique purpose, and we all have the spark of the divine. And our holiest work is to find that holy spark in each other and in ourselves. Now, everybody in the shul was very moved by this talk. But outside the shul, there was a deformed beggar who had walked many miles to hear the rabbi, but he was so ashamed of his hideous appearance that he stayed outside and listened through the window. But he was so moved by the talk that he decided to ask the rabbi for a personal blessing. So when the rabbi came out of the shul, the beggar walked up in front of him and he pulled the shawl off of his face and he said, Rabbi, would you please give me a blessing? But the rabbi was so startled by the beggar's hideous face that he blurted out, oh, heaven shield me from this abomination. And the beggar said, abomination am I? Go and tell the Creator, the one who made me, what an abomination he has made. Well, the rabbi was mortified. He could not believe what he had done. And he threw himself at the beggar's feet and he said, please forgive me. I have wounded you deeply. I am so terribly sorry. And the beggar said, I'll forgive you when the one who made me forgives you. And the rabbi groveled at the beggar's feet. He threw dirt on himself and he said, I cannot leave here until I have your forgiveness. Please, please forgive me. And the beggar said, I'll forgive you when the one who made me forgives you. You can come and go, you can leave anytime you want, but I won't forgive you till then. Well, the rabbi continued to grovel at the beggar's feet, and the beggar just repeated this. Meanwhile, at the rabbi's home, his family was wondering why he wasn't home for the High Holy Days. So eventually, his children, 2 sons and a daughter, came looking for their father. And they found him at the feet of the beggar. And when the beggar saw them, he said, oh, you're the children of the great rabbi. Do you mock people the way he does? And they said, our father wouldn't mock anyone. He's a very great being. But the rabbi said, no, I have wounded him. I mocked him, I hurt him deeply, and I can't leave here till I have his forgiveness. So the first son went up to the beggar and said, please forgive my father. You can see he's truly sorry. And the beggar said, I'll forgive him when the one who made him forgives him. When the one who made me. And the second brother had no better luck. And then the rabbi's daughter went up to the beggar and she very gently took him by the arm. And before I tell you what she said, I have to tell you what the story said to me. When I pick a story, and this one was 25 years ago, I pick it, or the story picks me, because something in it, so there's some issue that's up for me. And obviously in this one, the issue was forgiveness. And I use the story as my preparation for the High Holy Days. Exploring the story helps me explore whatever it is I'm dealing with, and that exploration is the path that kind of opens up the story. And I kept coming to this place in the story where the rabbi's daughter walks up, and I knew it had to be illuminated, and I didn't know what to do. And Yom Kippur was coming up, so what I do is I meditate and I visualize the characters, and I kept meditating and visualizing, and I realized for me this particular year, probably every year, the issue was self-forgiveness. I'd been locked in a negative cycle where I was the prisoner and the warden, blaming myself for everything. And I couldn't seem to get out of this cycle. And I kept meditating and visualizing, and nothing was coming. And Yom Kippur was coming up. So sometimes I get inspiration in a dream. So I decided to ask for a dream, be proactive here. So I went to bed using the ancient technology of setting my intention, my kavanah and prayer, and the modern technology of having a notebook and a pen and a flashlight in case anything came in the middle of the night. But nothing came. And by day, I was still meditating and visualizing, and the more I did, the more I realized that that particular year, the issue about self-forgiveness had to do with parenting. My oldest had turned 12. Now she's going to be 38 next month. And so she was experiencing the first pains and pangs of adolescence. Normal, right? But she was expressing them loudly. You know, you teach your kids to be in touch with their feelings and express what they feel, and then they do. And she did. And I was sure that all of what she was expressing was completely, that she was completely ruined, and it was all my fault. I had ruined her. And I was listing in my mind all the ways that I had ruined her whole life. I weaned her too soon. She was 2.5. It was that time that I let her cry in her crib for 15 minutes when I'd had no sleep for 48 hours. That ruined her. Or maybe it's just that she's the oldest, so there was more pressure on her. And all of this self-blame was weighing like stones in my heart. And by day, I kept meditating and visualizing, trying to open up the story, and by night, I kept asking for a dream. And finally, this cycle came to a halt when I got a call from my mother. That may seem normal to you, but my mother had been dead for 20 years. And it didn't come in my dream. It came in my daughter's dream. She got up one morning and said, "Mom, I had the strangest dream. I dreamed that your mother called." And I said, "Really? Who was it for?" And she said, "It was for you. And she wanted to talk to you, but I knew she was dead, so I told her she couldn't talk to you, but she insisted that she had to talk to you, so I said I would give you the message." And she did. I got the message. Suddenly, I realized that in order to forgive myself for not being a perfect parent, I had to first forgive my own mother. So I went jogging. That may seem weird, but there was a place that I used to go to when I jog on the TID ditch, where I'd slide down the path. There was a place where 3 trees come together. And I would always go there when I needed to meditate and to pray, because I'd sit right in the middle of those 3 trees. I'd put my hands on those trees and I would feel the presence of Shekhinah, the female presence of God, and I would call for the ancestors and I would feel the ancestors witnessing my prayers. So that day I jogged there, I slid down the trail, I sat right in the middle of the 3 trees, I put my hands on the trees, I felt the presence of Shekhinah, I felt the ancestors, and my mother was waiting. And she said, "It's time to forgive." I said, "Okay, I'm going to try." So I tried. I said, "I forgive you for not being there when I needed you." But the words seemed a little hollow and fake. But I tried again. "I forgive you for drinking too much." But the words didn't feel real. And my mother said, come on, you can do it. So I reached deeper and I tried. But I realized that those stones of unforgiveness that I had been holding for so long were warm and familiar. They were a part of me. And I said, what would I be without them? And my mother said, lighter. You'd be lighter. Lighter. I reached deep as I could and I tried and I said, I forgive you for not being there when I needed you. And I felt something lifting. And I tried again. I forgive you for drinking too much. And it lifted, and I felt my mother reach out and she took it. And I tried again. I forgive you, and with each one, I felt lighter and lighter and lighter. And when I was done, I leaned back and I had the sense that when I touched my mother, that her pain was exactly the same as mine. And I leaned back and I felt like I was being washed in water. I got up, and actually it had begun to rain. It was drizzling. I dusted myself off, and I climbed back up the trail, and I collected my Australian Shepherd Charlie, and we began jogging back down the trail, only I felt lighter. I was bounding down the trail. When I got home, I actually went in the bathroom and weighed myself. I weighed the same, physically, that is. Now the rabbi's daughter very gently touched the beggar on the arm, and she said, it's time to forgive. And the beggar said, I won't forgive until the one who made me forgives him. And the rabbi's daughter said, God has already forgiven my father. God's mercy just washes over us like the rain. He's waiting here. Not because he needs your forgiveness either. He's waiting here for your sake. Because malice stored up in the heart weighs like stones. It's time to forgive. And the beggar who had suffered years of misery and scorn felt something shifting inside of him. And he walked over to the rabbi and he knelt down and he said, I forgive you. Can you ever forgive me? And the rabbi said, it's done. And he got up and he called for a new garment which he wrapped around the beggar's shoulders, and they lifted the beggar onto the rabbi's donkey. And together they all walked to the next town. May we all get a little lighter this year.